All right, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning. Esi, thank you for being here and bringing your crew with you. This is a record, Like a Boss alumni in the house, as well as Esi's family, and then 3 other people. Welcome. No,
It's
seriously,
the community
it's great.
of Maine, which
It is
what's
the community.
amazing, right?
That's right. That's right. So thank you for being here. Thank you to Rue for hosting us. Thank you to our sponsors who make the work that we do at the Maine Trust for Local News possible. Couldn't be more grateful for all the support that we have received. And thank you, Esi, for you to be in Maine. We're so lucky to have you here, and cookies for breakfast. I've been really looking forward to this.
Great. That's great. And how many cookies does it take for me to bring so that I can be called a Mainer?
Oh, that's a great
more, right?
Yeah, more.
Okay.
Always,
all right.
always more.
Okay.
And thank you for your leadership of the United Way's corporate campaign.
Where's mine?
This year, I know that I saw Liz here,
Liz.
I love how the CEO of Tate's Bakeshop just dives in for the United Way here in Maine, and your presence in the community is awesome. So let's start with early Esi, as we like to do, and talk about how you realized you were a leader when you were age 8.
Yeah. As many of you know, I am an immigrant, so I was born in Central America, Nicaragua. And my path here, I can tell you the exact moment when it happened, because this is 1978, 79. Revolution was happening in Nicaragua, and my brother and I were underneath the bed holding hands because there were bombings happening in our neighborhood. And at that point, my parents said, okay, we have to send our kids. And we had family in Houston, so they sent us away for about a year while they were trying to figure things out on their own. And a couple of years later, they also moved through political asylum, similar to what we're doing here in Maine, bringing in migrants because they need to be safer, providing them an opportunity to really rebuild their lives and rebuild their communities here similarly. And so it was a tough time, right? My mom was a lawyer. My dad had owned a couple of really nice restaurants, so nothing fancy, but certainly a nice life. And when we came to the United States, poof, we've all heard those stories. They're gone. Right, so my mom became a housekeeper. My dad worked for Kentucky Fried Chicken. As the first member of my family, there are 4 siblings. I was the one who learned English first by watching a lot of cartoons. So kids, this is the way to learn. Watch more TV, eat ice cream, it is all good for you. But as a result of that, I just became the translator for my family as we're trying to navigate this new world. I helped my mom negotiate rent. I was 8 years old, I was negotiating rent with my mom. I walked with my dad to the banks and helped him fill out the small business loans that he needed in order for us to survive. And it was scary, and there was a lot of pressure of this 8-year-old girl trying to figure this out for the family. But also there was this enormous sense of impact, of empowerment that I was able to provide really early on in my family. And I think, some of the reactions when I tell that story is, it's like you were a kid, and, too bad that you were not able to really fulfill your childhood, or it was sad. But I can tell you, it was a gift. It was a gift to be able to feel empowered at such a young age, to feel that I could contribute to my family, that I could make an impact for us as our own little community. And that pride and that sense of contribution really early on just burst in me, and I knew that this is something that I wanted to do. And so with that work, my parents continue to work extremely hard, and they are the epitome of the American dream, from being a housekeeper. Then decades later, my mom had this really great firm where she was helping immigrants. My dad was able to move from Kentucky Fried Chicken, even though we were like, we love Kentucky Fried Chicken, don't ever
Who
move.
doesn't, right?
You know, to his own restaurants. And they became that American success story, which is amazing. And I go back and feel that I was a part of that. And so for me, it was extremely fulfilling, and it really shaped what I thought about how it is that life is, right? Being empowered, being a contributor, making an impact. Those are things that early on at 8 years old became a part of who it is that I wanted to be and looking for those opportunities. So I say that those leadership experiences came in really early on.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
know of no one else that started at 8, but it's been a thread that's carried you through your life. And your parents also were like, nothing could get in your way. Of course you were going to go to college.
Yeah.
Didn't matter what the cost was, and you ended up at Boston University, yes?
Yeah, exactly. And so my parents, God bless my mom, she's amazing. And I say God bless, she's still alive, but there was no way that we were not going to go to school. It was just not even a question. And it wasn't a question of like, how are we going to pay? How are we going to make it happen? The school's too expensive, the school's not. They just really believed that each one of their kids had these gifts and that it was their job to help us figure out how to make sure that we were navigating the system and they themselves cultivating and nurturing our academic interests so that when that time came, we could do whatever it is that we want to do. And that was a pretty bold statement from, very humble beginnings of, Esi, you want to be a journalist? Okay, we're going to make that happen. And one of the things that I love that my mom did was after her 2 or 3 jobs in housekeeping, she would go to the library and just try to talk to as many people as possible and in the little Dewey Decimal System way, look at all the scholarship opportunities that they were. And she would come home and she's like, Esi, fill this out. Sonia, fill this out. Maria, we were like a machine of like scholarship and merits. And it worked. We were able to go and, I went to BU, which was great. My sister went to Michigan, my other sister went to George Washington, my brother went to UF, and not that those colleges mean, in terms of prestigiousness, we can take those as they are, but more importantly, it was, she figured out the way that married our interest with the opportunities that they could really afford and make that happen. And to me also that resourcefulness is something that stuck with me. It wasn't as if, ooh, BU, that's a private school, it's so expensive, how are we going to afford it? It was, that's the school you want to go to? You want to be a journalist? Okay, we're going to make that happen.
Yeah, and the journalism career, how'd that go?
You tell me. I failed very fast.
No, not at all, but you went right into advertising, right?
I went into advertising. I really wanted to be a writer, studied journalism. I wanted to be a writer. My journalism teacher very early on said, Esi, you're working really hard. We appreciate that so much. Maybe copywriting is for you. And then when I went to the agency, they were like, Esi, you're working really hard.
It's a theme.
Exactly. Maybe copywriting's not for you. Let's bring you into the business world as to, this may seem better for you. But the college experience was tremendous, not because of the experience itself. I can't even tell you a class that I took, quite honestly. I think there was an architecture class that I took. Oh. There was also a class that I took on Beavis and Butthead, don't ask. But those are the ones that are indelible in my mind. But probably the most important thing, and I say these to the young women, this is not the most important thing, but it was the most important thing for me. This is where I met my husband, right? And I hear the groans of feminism, oh my God, don't go to college to find a husband. But and it wasn't just a husband, it was Stuart. Where's Stuart? He's over there.
There he is.
He's so shy, but he's
Come on up here, Stuart.
Come here,
Stuart. I'm kidding.
I say this, that my mom is responsible for making sure that I had a college career. Stuart is the reason why I'm here today. And he was just my rock, my champion. He pushed me to say yes to a lot of things that I would have said no to, constantly supporting me. And it takes that. We're all here because there are people who believe in you unconditionally, and there was never a time, even in my moments when I was like, I don't know if I could do this job. Like, I'm gonna be like a director where? And Stuart was the one who's like, yes, of course. And he also, by the way, would sit with me the day before presentations and just like on the couch, listen to my presentations 4, 5, 10 times, like all like big questions. So it's why Stuart is here, and the reason that I'm here. So behind a great woman is a great man, for sure.
There we go. So after you worked at Digitas,
Yeah,
Nickelodeon, where
yeah,
I guess the Beavis
yeah.
and Butthead experience was relevant.
Really?
L'Oreal.
Yeah, L'Oreal.
And then you went to Colgate-Palmolive,
Yeah.
which took your family all over the world.
Yeah.
So talk about that experience, which sounds exciting, but also a little bit scary.
Totally.
And you were in many, many countries. What was that like?
Totally, and it was great. So I'll take a step back a little bit because, meeting Stuart was great. Probably more important was meeting his family.
Yeah.
And because, again, I didn't have a lot of role models in the corporate world. My mom, again, like, that was not her forte. I was able to really connect with 2 people that made a significant impact in my career. One is Susan Rogers, my in-law, my mom-in-law here, who had an executive job and provided so much just guidance in the most earnest and authentic way. Something that I've never had before. And my cousin, Leonora Silk, I think, Margaret, you know her as well, and they were my biggest women supporters at that time. They're the ones who really started my network. And, Susan introduced me to so many different women in the corporate world. I had no idea. Mm-hmm. I'll tell you this is how little idea I had. I had a huge meeting at Procter & Gamble, and I was just excited. I'm like, I'm gonna rock it. And I went in, I'm like, I'm gonna look so good with my black pants, my fluorescent pink shirt, and my white jacket into this very corporate environment, basically like Miami Vice, right? And then I walk in, and it really is all Brooke Brothers suit, right? And I was like, already, I was like, I didn't get the job, which is okay. But those are the tiny little nuances that if you don't know, you just don't know. And so being able to have conversations with Sue about here's how I'm thinking about a job, here's what I'm thinking about, the questions that I'm asking, and then my cousin Leonora, who was just like, go to business school, talk to these companies. And so that started this swell of women connections, many of them who are here, who I consider partners, mentors, friends, who support each other. And I think that really has been the foundation of who I am today, is through those women. So thank you for that. Yeah. But then Colgate came along, which was really great. Darcy was around the corner when we lived in New York, and she can attest to this. We had this tiny little apartment. It was 4 people, 1 bathroom, 2 kids who had to go to the bathroom all the time. So I remember at one point being in the shower after a really long day of like a crappy meeting, and I just said, I just want to take a shower and read my People magazine and have a glass of wine in the bathtub. Is that so much to ask? I think the answer is no, right? But then, I'm in there, somehow, Andrew, sorry, like, I gotta go to the bathroom after soccer, Olivia comes in, Stuart, so suddenly, I'm like, what the F are we doing in Brooklyn? I'm like, why? We work so hard, I can't even take a shower. And I think there was so many beautiful moments about living in New York with our kids, but it was the moment that broke the camel's back where we said, we need more. We need more. And Colgate had come back and said, Essie, we really, like you, we want you to do big things for the company. It requires for you to move abroad, because that's the model in many CPGs, like you're going to have to move abroad. For a long time, we said no, 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 no. But after that shower incident, I was like, yes, yes, yes. We are leaving. And Stuart was very, very supportive. You know, he had his own design firm that was doing extremely well. And we realized, hey, you know what? Let's try it. Let's do something that's different. And so we went. We had this amazing run for 7, 8 years. We went to Switzerland. So I was the personal care director that managed 46 different countries and developed all of the strategies for personal care, which was great, allowing me to work in really fun places like France, other places like Slovenia that had never been oftentimes. The first meeting I had, my boss said, Essie, you need to make sure that the body wash business in Slovenia increases by blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, got it. Where is Slovenia? You know? So it was really dynamic. It was great dealing with different types of people, you know, working with the Italian team versus the French team. It was amazing. And as a result of that, the kids learned a little bit of Swiss German. We traveled Europe extensively just to understand, for my job, people, but also just as a family, being able to take advantage of this geography that's pretty amazing, right? Soon thereafter, I got a tap in my shoulder saying, okay, Essie, the next job is Malaysia. And I said, whoa, wait, hold on. Am I doing a good job in Europe? Because I'm like, why are you sending me so far away in Malaysia? And it was the most amazing job. I mean, I have to say, like, that's a job that we were questioning. Like, are we really going to be so far away? And Andrew, at that time, we were really nervous about how we would say this to the kids. And Andrew, I don't know if he's going to remember that, but we were hemming and hawing, and as a family, we're having these discussions. And he said, Mom, look, we want an international experience. Malaysia, that's an international experience. So let's do it.
Yeah.
So let's do it. And with that impetus and with that enthusiasm, we said yes. We went to Malaysia. It was the scariest at the beginning assignment, as you can imagine. Not a lot of women leaders, not a lot of, just quite honestly, even customer meetings would not happen as we would want, because they would say, like, who, you know, we want the CEO, and I would be like, I'm the CEO, and they're like, no, no, no. Well, then we need the vice president, who's the man, right? It was like, it wasn't, and it was tough. I have to tell you, it was one of the toughest experiences that I had. The business was struggling, government changes, tax changes, all happening, and having a woman leader just really did not provide the confidence that some of the organizations in government didn't really believe in. But from a family perspective, it was incredible. Can you imagine having this opportunity of living in a Muslim country, having kids go to school with people who they've never really experienced before? And so that was the highlight for us there. And I remember, Olivia, we were coming back for the holidays. This is 2016, maybe 2015. This is, you might recall, there was a Muslim ban happening at this time. And we were really nervous about coming back to the United States during this Muslim ban, because we were going to Texas, where my family was at the time, and we were wondering of the backlash and just what people might be saying. You hear about the insidious conversations that are happening in the news, and we wanted to prepare ourselves as to how it is that we were going to be managing that. And so Olivia, who at that point was 11 or 12, sat at the dinner table. Hey, Mom, you know what? If somebody says anything bad about a Muslim or Muslim people, I'll ask them. I live in a Muslim country, and I think everybody there is really kind. have you lived in a Muslim country? And to me, that was the gift, right? To have our kids be able to have those experiences and be able to have the opportunity, regardless of what's happening in the media, regardless of what's happening in the newspapers in terms of what they're reading or not reading, having their own lived experiences to be able to have their point of view was the biggest gift.
Yeah, that's,
Possible.
yeah, and so few people have that opportunity.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
yeah.
So-
And your career at Colgate enabled that for your family.
That's
But
exactly
now,
right.
now it's time to come back to Maine.
Now
So let's talk about how that happened.
Yeah, we needed to. So they said, so after that experience, I said, Maine was always just like all roads and travel needed to lead to Maine, and that was something that I was very explicit on. So after that Malaysia experience, we were ready. We were like, okay, this is a really tough job. We're all ready for Thompson, Maine. And so the CEO calls me up and says, Esi, we're so excited. I'm like, me too. What's next? Brazil. Like,
Oh.
okay, one more stop. And so I said, we're doing Brazil with the understanding that Maine is next, right? Yes, okay, we're gonna do it. And actually, Brazil was an amazing, amazing, amazing experience. We went from Birkins to bikinis, very different, very different. And, I'll tell you, like, the people, and I thought, if anybody talks to Stuart, it's like the optimism, it's a 200 million people, it's huge, it's a continent, really. The people are so optimistic. They have these two sayings that I love. One is, you have to peel a pineapple every day. Who's peeled a pineapple?
Yeah, that's not easy.
It's not easy, exactly. You know what? And you have to peel a pineapple every day. It's not that big of a deal. Peel it, and then guess what? You have this amazing, luscious fruit. So stop complaining about peeling it. Just peel it, and peel another tomorrow, and it's gonna be okay. So it's like, I love that attitude. And the other quote that I love from Brazil is, dance on the roof tonight because you may not have a roof tomorrow. And I think that's the type of experience that also maybe we took it to another level. We're like, who cares? Party on! But it was really fun. But again, similarly, it was time. The more experiences we had, the more experiences we were saying, oh, I wish Grammy and Pop were here. I wish that my sisters were here. It was just like we were enjoying these experiences to an extent, but really wishing that we could have these experiences with the people that we loved. And so coming back to Maine was, this is what we wanted to do. And even though the kids had been coming here every summer, and actually everybody, all of our family visited us at least one location, just being here is what made us feel like we're coming home. So after years abroad, years in Brooklyn, years in Nicaragua, Maine became our home. Maine, and now actually, having lived here for almost 5 years, this is the longest we've ever stayed anywhere.
Yeah, and you don't leave once you get here. You don't leave
No.
soon.
Our kids said, like Stuart, actually Andrew and Olivia afterwards said, Mom, you can travel. We're here.
Yeah.
So just keep sending the checks. It's okay. We're not going to go anywhere.
You also said that, of all the places that you lived, you always longed for the sense of belonging.
Yeah.
And it eluded you, but
Yeah.
yet you found it here, of all places. Talk
Yeah.
about how that felt.
Well, what's interesting is many of you guys know that I'm from Nicaragua, but also my dad is Chinese. So often I say I'm a Chicaraguan, right? And it's cute and it's funny. However, it really doesn't mean anything to anybody. And so growing up in the United States, I really didn't, even though I am American, I came when I was 8, so I'm American. Like, I am all about pop culture, and I do feel American. Many times I wasn't made to feel American, as you could imagine, right? And so when I went to Switzerland, people said, oh, Esi, you are so American. Not in a good way. No, not in a good way. And then when I traveled to Asia, they were like, you are not Asian. You are super Latina. And then, of course, moving to Brazil, they're like, what? you are not Latina, you are una chinita. Like it really was. Like everywhere I was going, people continued to tell me who it is that I was or wasn't. And so when we moved to Tom's of Maine, I just realized like I don't want people to tell me who I am or who I'm not. And so in my first town hall at the Tom's office, they introduced me, and I was on stage, and this wasn't planned, but in my head, I said, I'm not Nicaraguan, I'm not Chinese. What I said is, I'm an immigrant, because that's really who I am. At the end of the day, my grandparents were immigrants, I'm an immigrant. I've been now all over the world, and that's probably the identity that I most associate and feel most comfortable saying. And nobody can tell you, oh, you're not an immigrant. Like nobody can tell you, you're kind of an immigrant, but not like, and it's something that I feel that I can really own. And it's really who it is that I am. And so it was incredibly empowering, I have to say, that at the age of 42, finally, or 43, I was able to say, here's who I am, without anybody else having to question it.
Yeah, at a Tom's of Maine town hall of all places.
Exactly.
Right. So you were with Tom's for a couple of years, and then how'd you get the call up to Tate's Bakeshop?
So this is a funny story because the CEO of Tom's of Maine, Nancy, who's not here, she could make it today, went to Tate's afterwards.
Oh.
And so then she called me up and said, hey, do you want to become the CEO of Tate's? And that was it.
Yeah.
She's now retired, so I'm hoping that she calls me up and says, I have $1 gazillion so you can retire too. But I don't think that's going to happen. But it just so happened that she really understood my career. We worked at Colgate forever in Asia and in Europe. So she really understood the value that I have in terms of small company, big company, and recruited me to be at Tom's. Moved from Tom's to Tate's. And then the best thing was my little cousin, Mateo. When I told him about the job, he said, oh my God, thank God we can stop brushing our teeth. All you do is talk about brushing your teeth. Now we can eat cookies. I'm like, eat cookies all you want.
Yeah, keep snacking.
Keep snacking. Exactly.
So one of the things I find so interesting is that you live in Maine. You're the CEO of a company that is based in Southampton, New York.
Yeah.
How do you manage that? How do you feel and stay connected to the employees?
I have to say, we do get together probably every 2 weeks physically, just because, as many of you guys know, lots of work can happen remotely, but a lot of things need to happen just physically in order for budget planning, for just brainstorming ideas when you're developing a deadline. The closeness of it, there's nothing like it. However, I do have to say that remote works, and it works for us. So I know that there are a lot of companies still trying to figure out the whole remote, hybrid, when corporate. For us, it works because we are all remote. There's not one office. So my CFO is in Pennsylvania, my CMO is in DC, my VP of sales is in Georgia. Our plant is in the Hamptons. But as a result of that, because there is not one specific location, it is equitable in that we're all far away. And so we've been able to really work closely together. We text a lot. We get on Zooms a lot. And we've actually stopped meeting on a formal basis. So we do have monthly meetings that are extremely important, that are formal. But what we've realized is that the personal connections is what's going to allow us to have that banter, to have the ideas, to be able to be, calling somebody and said, I'm stuck here. And it was clunky for a little bit because the idea was if you have a meeting, invite everybody. And we realized that everybody was going to many meetings without them needing to be there. And so the personal relationships really were elevated when we started saying, okay, Lisa, don't include me in that meeting. Just go right to Darcy, right?
Yeah.
And just have that connection and be able to have and be okay with texting or FaceTiming and not worrying about what is the technology that's going to bring us together. Worry about what the technology means to you and how you're able to connect. And so it's been a more informal opportunity for us to be able to test out different platforms. We tried Slack, we tried so many different things, but at the end, FaceTime, texting, and just quite honestly getting on a Zoom once in a while.
Yeah.
It's what's worked.
Yeah, yeah. Um, in preparation for the interview, you sent me a bunch of links of podcasts and
Excuse
things
me.
that you had participated in, and we will share them all because hearing the Tate story about how Kathleen started
Oh,
the
yeah,
company,
yeah.
similar to you at age 8,
Yeah,
but a very
yeah.
different, very different path. So I would love for you to all get that as follow-up, Esi. But you have so many great leadership principles, so I want to kind of bang through
Sure.
them and have you talk about them. And one of my favorite is the power of real. So what does
Yeah.
that mean to you, and how does it manifest itself at Tate's?
By the way, Power Reel is the only thing I know what to do. And I think many of you guys could appreciate that. For the longest time, especially women in the corporate world, were told what to wear, how to act. And the expectation was that you are basically, I'll say it, you're going to be a man, just happen to be in a woman's body, but we're expecting you to be leading like a man, which is really hard. It's exhausting to be anything but yourselves. I think all of us can attest to that. And so I started doing a lot of work in management and understanding of like, what is it that allows people to really thrive? Because at the end of the day, as leaders, that's what we need. It's like, how do we thrive and make sure that we're bringing and extracting the best of our teams so that you can deliver solutions, outsized growth, and innovation? There's this idea about psychological safety net. Most of you have heard about this. Well, this notion that if you're providing a safety net of your employees, people will ask questions, people will innovate, people will be able, if you feel safe, you're able to question one another, right? And so that psychological safety net concept has been around, I would say, since the 70s. In the 2000s, Google came out with a longitudinal study that looked at so many different types of high-performing teams. And the thread that they found that made them most high-performing and results-oriented were the teams that had psychological safety net, teams that felt safe enough to be able to challenge status quo, to be able to have constructive conflict. How to do so is really hard, right? And what I've noticed was, being in corporate America for the last 20 years, this idea of psychological safety net, of authenticity, we've all heard those words, but the reality of leadership hadn't really changed at all. If you think about leadership, not in the last 5 years, but in the last 10 years, it was very much command and control. Somebody was the boss, they knew everything, and it was really more about execution versus anybody being able to provide that psychological safety net. I think what happened in the 2020s, not only because of the pandemic, but because it was the pandemic combined with all the social reckoning that we were seeing, the social injustices, people working from home, we needed more from our leaders than just the command and control. We needed our leaders to make us feel safe, just physically safe, and we needed to ask big questions of our leaders. And so when leaders started getting these questions that like, I'm scared, I'm scared about what's happening in Chicago. What does this mean to my company? Or I'm a Black woman and I want to understand like, how are you going to make sure that I'm protected and that I'm growing in this company? Really tough, important discussions that we needed to have. Leaders had to step up. Leaders had to start not answering questions about the bottom line or just about profits in terms of 3-year plans, but like human questions that were critical to the workforce. And that, along with this really fun aspect of technology where we saw how fallible leaders were in technology, allowed us to see leaders in a different way. So I think all of us can remember, a couple of YouTubes of where you have this like real high power person and the kid comes into the room naked, or like those, and those are the little moments in time that allowed leaders to be authentic, right? And being able to have that authenticity then gave the teams permission to say, let me ask you a question about humanity, because I'm a little nervous as to what's happening here. And so I think that set the groundwork for leaders needing to become not command and control, the know-it-all of the industry, but a carrier of human badge that allowed teams to then be able to ask tougher questions. And so the way I see it, and I do talk a lot about three things. One is vulnerability, authenticity, and then real. And I say that real is really the magic sauce for being able to develop that psychological safety net. So if you think about it, vulnerability is a point in time. You tell a story of like, this is when I failed and I was vulnerable, and then everybody can be like, oh, that's a really nice story, but then that's it. It's very concrete. Authenticity, also similarly for me, is let me just be very authentic with you one-on-one in this story that I'm going to tell you. But then the next day, we're back to status quo. Real means that I am committed to being myself, Esi Seng, at any given time, regardless of who I am, whether I am with my team, whether I'm with my board, because that's really the only way to deliver psychological safety net. How could you feel safe if one day I'm being very real with you and the next day I am very corporate, right? Like, and real means whatever it is that who you are. And so by showing and being real, it means being consistent every day with whomever you are. And when people understand what your consistency is, what your steady state is, then people can say, Esi, you know what? I disagree with you. I have this other idea. I heard what you said, but I'm going to come back and I think I can build on that. So it's that consistency of being real with your company for a specific amount of time that will give people the courage and understanding, like, this is a safe zone. I know how Esi reacts, and being able then to really raise questions that will provide innovation. So I think that's, for me, a big opportunity is how do we push ourselves? And many of us were raised in a corporate world where we were told not to be real, where we were told to be authoritative. So being real, I think it is the magic sauce that's going to allow companies, especially in the United States, really unleash innovation, unleash questions and discussions that we're not having that are going to allow us to propel us.
So we're about 5 minutes away from questions. I wanted to ask you about a founder brand within a big company. Because that seems to be like one of your superpowers, about how to preserve the magic of the founder brand but be successful within a giant parent company. Talk about what that looks like and how you protect the culture of the founder brand.
It's actually really fun, and it's talk about lots of personalities. Many of you guys know that I worked at Tom's of Maine for a bit, and I love Tom Chappell. Tom's of Maine, the office is in Kennebunk. Tom Chappell continues to live across the street from the office, even though he sold his company like 25 years ago. Sometimes I would go into the office and he'd be like, Esi, I just saw the ad that you put out. I think the green looks really bad. or Esi, did I tell you this story about when something happened? I really think that you need to bring back the saffron toothpaste. I'm like, thank you, Tom. Okay. But the reasons that these big companies are buying more and more small companies is because the growth trajectory of CPGs, of consumer goods, have really been down over the last course of 20 years. It used to be consumer packaged goods GDP was like significantly higher than that of the market, by 15 to 20%. Now it's significantly less. And so how they're growing is not because of new products, but because they're buying new brands. And so it's a gift, and it's a talent to be able to say, okay, what is the right small company that can live within the world of this big company? And for me, what I found was most interesting and most important was that taking the time to understand the magic of the brand. What makes Tom's magic? You know, it's the people, it's the way they source the product, it's the way about they're just so passionate about the B Corps. The big company is going to come in and railroad quickly, and I'm saying that in quotes because that's not always true, and wanting to understand efficiencies, synergies, scale, right? And so I think for me, what's been really working is talking to everybody at the small company, understanding what that magic is, trying to articulate what that is, putting it on paper, and then giving the big company a little bit of the Heisman, saying, okay, we're going to integrate. Don't worry. We're going to develop systems. Don't worry. We're going to be a scale. Don't worry. But you have to have a true understanding of what makes this company magic. Otherwise, you will kill it. And so I think that's been where I've been able to drive some value in being able to articulate what the magic is to the board in a way that creates value. And at the same time, work with the small companies and say, you know, Toms, we want to grow, we believe that everybody has the right to have this amazing toothpaste in a natural way. We can't do it without a Colgate. Right? We can't. And one of the things, in fact, that we did that was super, super fun is that we've been working at Tom's of Maine trying to develop the world's first recyclable tube. So toothpaste, everybody uses it, not recyclable until 2 years ago. We were trying, we couldn't do it. And then actually, the only way we were able to do so was with the Colgate R&D. So Colgate, they have the scale. And so I think that's where the beauty happens. So not all corporates are bad, not all small companies are anti-corporate, because I think that's the perfect blend of what you can see of how can we would never have been able to develop this recyclable tube without the R&D and resources of Colgate.
Yeah, and you did that at Tom's, and I see you doing that at Tate's Bakeshop as well, because you're going to meetings with Oreo and Triscuit, and I mean those are big brands. So yeah, that's great. What questions do we have for Esi? Oh my gosh, the time flew by. Sir.
Question, Esi, and I'm a retired accountant, and it's a broad question about financial literacy, which a lot of entrepreneurs miss. Could you discuss the importance of the financials, accounting, understanding how financials work?
I mean, that is the backbone of these companies, right? And so I'm interested to hear that you think that we're waning in our financial literacy. Maybe you could tell me more a little bit about that. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think even in grade school, that's where you need to start. And it's just my observation that there are many people that are successful, but they're either missing, I need an expert in this area, or I need to at least understand how the financials are put together. So I think it starts early, and in general, it's missing.
Yeah, what I'll say is that I think, you know, we have some kids here, they're doing math that's much harder than my math.
Oh God, I had to check out on my son's math in third grade.
I don't know. You know, but I think the aspect is especially how do you translate math to financial literacy, right? And I think that's the next course. I can tell you that Andrew, he's taking a statistics class that's very financially focused. So I think the curriculums are changing, especially for people who are interested in business. And what we have found at the corporations is that financial literacy becomes part of the curriculum early on when you start new people. And I think that's becoming important because this idea that you're going to be in marketing, you're going to be in sales, you're going to be in operations, but finance happens in a silo, that's no longer the case. So ensuring that that financial literacy and people understand, like, what is your role in the P&L early on happens early on. So it's not finances, it's not an input, or it's not an output. It needs to be embedded into what we're doing in order for us to be able to deliver that. And I think that really is the answer, is ensuring that when you're in marketing, it's not only marketing. It's finance is the red thread across all of the different functions.
I also think the CEO's best friend is the CFO.
Absolutely.
Right?
Always.
Yeah.
Always.
Hand in hand. Question behind Jessica.
Right.
Yeah, you. Yeah.
I have a question about corporate politics. So here you are in Europe, you're knocking the ball out of the park, for Colgate. And they turn around, Colgate turns around and says, look, we want to send you to a Muslim country in Malaysia. What does Colgate think? Oh, come on. Can you, I'm assuming that, what did you think about it? How did you?
I was nervous for sure. I Googled like how far away is Malaysia from Maine, right? Like, for number one. But the plan is really about building global business leaders. And so, if I had to stay only in Switzerland or only in New York, truly having an understanding of what it takes to build a business in Malaysia or in Switzerland or in Indonesia, that view and that lens, that purview is very small versus actually living there. And so the understanding is that you want to be a global leader, and therefore you need to go and live in these countries to understand what, especially for a company like Colgate that's personal care, how do people live? What are their challenges? What are their values? So that when you're developing strategy, you're doing it in a way that's a lived experience with people around you, with your consumers at heart, versus reading papers about it. So that really is the underpinning of that. It's understanding, truly understanding. You want to be a global leader, live out there so that you can be the best global leader.
But it wasn't putting a woman in a position that she may not be able to succeed.
I actually do think that I had a lot of training. I felt very safe, and a lot of people had my back. Right.
Yeah, I think that they're not putting you there to fail. They're putting you there. It's a bold move, but to support you.
But it is. But you're right. But it was scary. I mean, one of the things that I was told is learn kickboxing in the morning.
Oh.
No, this is important. Like go to kickboxing in the morning because you're going to be surrounded by all of these men all day long, and kickboxing in the morning is going to give you that physical energy, intense, exactly, to be like, what? No.
Nancy Marshall.
So what is the main thing? What attracted you to Maine in the first place? And when are you going to move your manufacturing facility to Maine?
Very good question.
I know people.
I know you can do it. So Maine, all roads led to Maine. All roads. Every time we signed on, Switzerland was their first one, and then when they sent us to Malaysia, with the C, I'm shaking on Malaysia, but right, where we need to go. And then afterwards, it was the impetus. We knew that this is what we wanted to end up. Firstly, because Tom's of Maine, it's like, what a dream. Like, that would have been my dream. And also, this is where we knew we needed to be as a family. And that there was a point in time, Andrew was in high school, Olivia was about to start high school, and we said, this is time. It's time. We want our kids, and they wanted to come to Maine. And so that really was the impetus. Now, I'll have to get back to you on the manufacturing.
Yeah, you know what? As much as I love more manufacturing in Maine, you can't move that cookie out of the Hamptons. I mean, it's part of the brand, Nancy.
We did do a blueberry. We did do a blueberry one. With Wyman's. Yeah.
Oh, nice. This is going to be our final question.
Yeah.
Esi, your story of immigration is very touching and it's very powerful. Have you ever gone big? This year, 2024, is one of the leading issues in America. Have you ever gone big, or you have thought of going big with the successful aspect of your message about immigration?
Wait, she just did it like a boss. I mean, does it get any bigger?
I haven't really thought about what that is. And I think Liz is here, and she's heard my story, that there was a moment in time where I was thinking about becoming a not-for-profit, making change, being a change maker. And at that point, my Dean Fraser, who I love at NYU, said, Esi, like the biggest impact you can make is work really hard, make a lot of friends who have means, and that's how you can make an impact, right? Like that was the advice that he gave to me. He's like, I know your strengths. Become a CEO. We're not going to see a lot of women of color who are CEOs. If you make that happen, then you can do a lot of different things. I'm not sure if policy is in my blood. I'm not very good at it, but I think partnering with people who can do so, and if I can be a conduit of that, I would love to do that.
You are good at it, I've got to tell you.
Well, thank you, Esi, for
Thank you all.
sharing your really, really powerful story. We're so fortunate that you finally got back to Maine, and we're not going to let you go.